Most new Yunara players are holding themselves back with simple mistakes. Fixing just a few of these will make your games instantly easier. Let's go over 5 of the biggest mistakes that I see in new Yunara players and how you can fix them. So the first mistake that I see is that players are too passive in using Yunara Q. So once you have around 6 stacks, you should look to trade onto an enemy champion, which will give you twice the stacks, right? So you'll get your 8 stacks, and then you should just trade. Like, when you're level 1, you are really strong, and you shouldn't underrate how strong your Q ability is while you have it on. So while you have your Q uptime and you're hitting the enemy champions, you're also stacking up your lethal tempo, and this makes these long trades extremely worthwhile. The only problem is, while you're chasing, you need to be a bit careful if they don't back out too much, because you don't want to get too much minion aggro on yourself, right? So you'll have to assess a little bit on how much damage you can put onto them and how much damage you'll take back. But even a trade where you lose a little bit more HP is completely fine to take. Just make sure that you use these windows to maximize the damage output you do with your Q. Even if you don't prep your stacks on enemy minions, you still just need to hit enemy champions 4 times before you can activate Q, right? So for example, if you're playing into a melee support, such as Thresh or something with a hook, as long as you're playing behind the minion and they're playing 2 up front, then you can kind of use them to stack up your Q, and then you turn on your Q and you just turn on the enemy ADC, which is the priority target, and you can just put a good trade onto him. Just make sure you can space out the 2v2 dynamic in which you're inserted in. So second mistake that I also see is that the W is used without any purpose. So for example, you're pushing a wave and suddenly you just throw out a random W, and then you're hoping that it lands and that it can follow up with a trade on the enemy champion, right? I feel like this is not an effective way to use your W. The best way to do it would be to, while you are engaging in a trade, then you W mid the trade, so while they actually want to space you, they're getting hit by that slow, which will make them want to back off, and while they're backing off, they're actually just getting hit with the slow for a longer amount of time, right? Like, the more they try to leave the W, the more damage they take from it as well, so that is a helpful way of using the W. You want to try to avoid having any targets in between your W, just so it doesn't get caught by enemy minions or something like that, right? Therefore, it makes the W projectile a lot faster to travel to the enemy champion. Also, if you just spam it in lane, you will run out of mana really quickly. However, if you're more disciplined on using your W, you'll also have a better time managing your mana bar, which will make your whole laning phase a lot easier to play with as well. The third mistake that I also see is just wasting the ultimate, right? Where, for example, there's going to be this fight, it looks good, we commit the ultimate early, and then the whole team's just disengaged. This is bad. We want to just use our ultimate is when both teams are using their important cooldowns and they want to go in, they just want to fight to the death, right? So over an objective or something like that. You want to make sure that when you go in with this ultimate, you are committed. You are there to deal as much damage as you can in those 15 seconds. Of course, there's exceptions where you just use your ultimate to get access to your dash because you need to get away from a gank. You need to get away from a bad position that you put yourself in. And that's not optimal, right? But it works for that function. But the way you optimize that ultimate is really by just getting as much uptime as possible and using that ult when both teams are committed to the fight. So don't use your ultimate to start a fight, but use it to finish it. For mistake number 4, we're going to talk a little bit about recall fundamentals. So for example, before you go to base, you want to have a plan on what you are doing with the wave and what you are going to purchase. So for example, we have 1,000 gold. It's better to just base and buy an important item that can give us a lot of AD and refresh our health and mana so we can just do better in the next fight, right? So when you play with this in mind, you won't take any random fights while you are down in gold, down in resources as well, perhaps, and you have a clear plan on what you want to do. So for example, this way, you can look into the next minion wave as I'm just going to push this wave. I don't care what happens to it afterwards. I'm just going to crash it and base immediately because I can buy this Hearthbound Axe or something, right? So here, the important part is making sure that you have a plan. And this just applies to every stage of the game, really. Like, as long as you have an idea of how you want to play the game, it will help you out a lot. So in sum, you want to prepare your recall before you actually do it. So you look at the next wave that is going to happen, and you can decide if you want to stay for another wave, because maybe you want to greed for a better item from your recall, or if you just want to crash this wave, you already have a decent buy, and you should just base, get your items, go back on the map, and you're a lot stronger for whichever next fights are going to happen. And this is not only around your items, but you should also consider objective timers. So for example, if a Drake is about to spawn in 1 minute, it's a good backing timer. If the Drake is about to spawn in like 10 seconds, backing now means you're not present for the fight if you're team is already preparing for it, right? And mistake number 5 is a bit more patch dependent. At the moment, Yunara has 3 items that she builds the most. It's Yuntal, it's Blade of the Ruined King, and it's Kraken Slayer. I think you should adapt your build based on the game that you have so you can maximize your impact. So for example, I'd recommend going Yuntal only if you can afford BF Sword on your first base. I wouldn't really try to go out of my way to buy this item, as it's not as well performing as Kraken Slayer or Blade of the Ruined King at the moment. While Yuntal will get that 25% crit chance, that aligns super well with the Yunara passive. Blade of the Ruined King and Kraken Slayer have really good interactions with Yunara's Q, which make them a really good first item spike for Yunara. While you can argue that scaling is important, being able to dish out a lot of damage in early fights can really lead you to snowball, get more items, and play ahead from the enemy team, which will lead you in turn to victories as well. So yeah, buy Yuntal if you get that BF sword early. If you're playing against HP stackers such as Dr. Mundo, Cho'Gath, those types of champions that just reach like 4,000, 5,000 health, a lot of bruisers, Blade of the Ruined King will be exceptional buy because it gives you a little bit of sustain, and it also has the max HP damage passive. The sustain on Blade of the Ruined King works really well with Yunara Q, where you get a lot of lifesteal when you have that active while hitting a minion wave. You just vamp a lot out of it. But it also has attack damage and attack speed, which are 2 very desirable stats for Yunara. Kraken is just the best first item spike that you're going to get, so it's a really good item to buy. So as a quick recap, when you have your Q up, you want to play more aggressively in lane. Be very disciplined when you use your W. Think about using your ultimate when you have the most uptime. Manage waves according to your recalls and what you want to buy and when objectives spawn. And think about picking the right item each game. Doing all of these things should make you win a lot more games on Yunara. I hope you have a lot of fun. Hope you have a lot of success. If you want to look more in depth into builds, the video from the last patch is still valuable for this one, as no items were changed or anything on Yunara was changed, so therefore it could be useful. Also have a mobile fire guide that you can check out for more details on Yunara. And take care. I'm Infinum. Have a great time. Bye bye.